always been a big fan of this next guest, and I'm going to let you introduce him to me. But let me just say this. Whenever his fights were on, you stopped what you were doing and you went to the TV to watch. Because
Absolutely. You know, when I was 10 years old, my next guest, or our next guest's mother, owned a really popular tavern in Auburn. And my dad brought me home this gray sweatshirt that said Greg the Mutt Haugen on it. And I was always a huge fan after that. He's a 2-division world champion. He's the greatest fighter ever to come out of the state, and he's a Hall of Famer, Greg Haugen.
Welcome, Greg.
Hey, how's it going, man?
We're really good. You know, I was looking over. I was kind of doing a little look of your career, and I remember. And maybe you can talk about it. I remember when you defeated Jimmy Paul. I was on TV, and when you won the championship, it was like I remember celebrating with my friends because your career was so amazing. Can you talk about the first championship you ever won?
Yeah, geez, I think that was like next week, December 5th,
right.
86. They gave me, they picked me as an opponent. I remember Manuel Stewart. He came to my wedding a couple days after the fight, and he told me, he goes, we had no idea who you were. You know, I was in the top 12 because I just got in the top 12 because I won the NABF title, and so they put me in the top 12. And, you know, when you're champion, you only have to defend the title once a year against the number one contender, and then the rest of the time you can fight in guys in the top 12. And this fight was on Showtime. It was, I think other semi-main event was John Mugabe against Dwayne Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I was I don't know, 5 or 6-1 underdog, and you know, I knew that Jimmy had the best jab in the business. So, you know, my goal was to just go out there and eliminate his jab the first few rounds, and make him an ordinary fighter. And I had to, every time he jab, I'd go under it with that hard right to the ribs and then come up to the chin with a left hook. And so by about the 5th round, he was afraid to throw his jab, and, so it worked.
I noticed the first time I ever saw you fight was in your first title defense. They were 15-round fights at the time, and it was against Vinnie Pazienza, and you broke his nose, and you gave him 2 swollen eyes, and they gave him the decision. How did you think you won the fight, I'm sure?
Oh, there's not a question in my mind I won that fight. You know, I mean, he knows it and I know it and the whole country knew it. And, but I fought him in his hometown, and I had an idiot for a manager, and, he'd take, an extra $25,000 and we'll fight in your hometown, no problem. Haugen can do that, he don't mind. And I didn't mind. I mean, one of the things I really enjoyed was going into a hometown crowd and quieting down 10, 15,000 people because you're beating up their hero. I mean,
was that Boston? Was Vinnie from Boston?
No, he was from Rhode Island.
Rhode Island.
Providence.
Same deal, yeah.
Yeah, so, I just, I knew I whipped him pretty good, and, I had a real bad taste in my mouth, so I just went back to the gym and started training, and, I had a fight, I had a 2-up fight. I had a 10-round fight in the time that before a second fight, right, because Vinny's nose was healing. So, I went back and just got in a little better shape. And the next fight was in, Atlantic City. And, like I told, the reporters, what's the difference? 200 miles and 10,000 Dagos. We're in driving distance to Providence. So, it's pretty much still his hometown deal. And, we had an agreement that, I'd go to Providence and fight him, and he came to Washington or to Vegas, wherever we could make the fight, and, return the favor. So, but in the second fight, he wasn't a man of his word, so we ended up fighting in Atlantic City, and, and I just pretty much fought the same fight as I fought the first time, but I just threw some more jabs, and...
was the second one 12 rounds?
15.
The second one was 15, too?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I actually think in some ways probably, or do you think it might have been beneficial that you were robbed the first time because it set up another 2 fights and then it started kind of this big rivalry between the 2 of you? I
didn't want to lose. There's no question about that. I hated losing, and, especially when you're getting it stuck to you and you didn't lose a fight.
Right.
I mean, But what are you going to do? You know, you cry about it, you start whining, everybody thinks you're a crybaby. So, you know, I sucked it up, got in better shape, went out and just proved to the country that the first fight was, you know, a robbery, and I wasn't real happy about it. And so, yeah, I mean, it was a good rivalry. You know, Vinny's one of those kind of guys, you know, it's pretty hard to knock out. He's a tough guy, and, you know, constantly coming, perpetual motion, always coming forward, and, but we had 3 fights, and, you know, he still, you know, tries to get to me. He said, I won 2 out of 3, and
well, didn't he? The third fight he kind of ran, didn't he? Most of the fight.
Third fight he ran the whole 10 rounds. So yeah, it was only a 10-rounder in the third fight. He came out and it was, you know, and he had his nose broke the first 2 fights. And in the third fight he had Kevin Rooney, who was his new trainer, so they had him come out and he ran and he just pity pat run, pity pat run. And so they gave him the decision, you know. And so you know, if he won any of the fights, yeah, I'll give him the third fight. But I know the first 2 15-rounders, I put it on him pretty good.
I think that was the great thing about this rivalry between the two of you, because there was no quit. I mean, no matter, you know, your nose was broken or blood was flowing, you kept on coming, and that's what made these fights so amazing. Just out of curiosity, do you keep in touch with Vinny? I mean, do you have, like, Facebook friends of opponents you used to have? And...
Yeah, you know, he's one of my Facebook friends.
Really?
We go at it on the Facebook all the time. We go at it, you know. He's wanting number 4, and I said, yeah, well, I'm 140 and you're 240, so that ain't gonna work.
Hey, I remember when I was in high school. I mean, this isn't reported a lot, but I remember reading that when you were a teenager, that you actually you fought in tough man contests in Alaska and were knocking out all these older, like, adult guys. Is that a true story?
Yeah, I wasn't a teenager. I moved up to Alaska when I was 21, and, you know, and it was in the bars. You know, you had these guys that, you know, most of them weren't fighters, you know. The guys get a couple beers and, oh, come on, Jim, get up there and get your butt kicked. Come on. You know, so, yeah, I fought 24 of those fights, and I won 24 of them, and I think the heaviest guy I fought was, they called him the Yukon Crusher, and he was about 250 pounds. And, you know, but I won all 24 fights. You know, I just go out there and you know, if they were bigger than me, I'd just go and give them the old rope-a-dope for the first round. I'd just lay on the ropes and let them pound on me, and I'd cover up and just let them tire themselves out, so that in the second and third round, all they could do is stand there and let me beat them up or quit.
We're talking to the greatest fighter, I believe, from the state of Washington, Auburn's Greg the Mutt Haugen. You know, last week Hector Camacho was killed, and you actually fought him a couple times. You won the WBO light welterweight champion from him. Can you tell us about Hector? I mean, what kind of guy was he? What kind of fighter was he?
Oh, well, you know, I mean, Hector was a great fighter. I mean, you know, he wasn't 38-0 when I fought him for a reason, you know. I mean, I thought, you know, I think at the time, you know, he could have been maybe one of the greatest junior lightweight champions. I thought, you know, at junior lightweight, I thought he was pretty unbeatable because of his hand speed. He was quick, hard to hit. You know, didn't hit real hard, but I had run-in with Hector in 1982. I was living in Alaska, and I just won the Alaska Lightweight Championship, and Hector's coming up there doing a promotional tour for, because he was going to fight John Montez. He was moving up from junior lightweight to lightweight, and he was fighting up in Anchorage at the Sullivan Arena. So they came up there, and they were doing a promotional tour, so they called me up and asked me if I'd be willing to spar Hector, Friday night, and then twice Saturday to do some promotional stuff for this fight he had coming up. I said, sure. So he obviously, figured that I was some hillbilly from Alaska that couldn't fight, and so we were in the Anchorage Sheridan, there was probably 1,000 people there watching, and the first round we're out there, and he's out there dropping bombs on me, trying to knock me out. And I'm just okay. Well, it's good for you, it's good for me. So second round, I started throwing my own bombs back and bloodied his nose pretty good in his mouth, and so they paid me for that, and then we were supposed to fight, do it again twice the next day, and so later that night I get a call, and there's the guy, hey, Hector's got to leave town. He had a family emergency come up. So this the deal for tomorrow. We're not going to be sparring him. So yeah, okay, whatever. So I don't know. A few hours later, I'm out at the Great Alaskan Bush Company, and I run into him. So hey, Hector, I thought you were leaving town, man. So we had kind of known each other from the 80s. I reminded Hector in 91 when I fought him that, I was a hillbilly up in Alaska that he sparred, and he kind of remembered that, and realized, okay, this guy again. So, I had a run-in with Hector long before our fight. And,
the first fight, there was no question I thought that you beat him. The second fight, you were obviously able to get under his skin in both fights. But the second fight, I actually thought you won as well. He got deducted a point in the 11th round. Don't you think the HBO announcers at the time were pretty biased in favor of Camacho?
Yeah, Larry Merchant's an idiot. He's probably the biggest idiot on TV. Doesn't know anything about boxing. And he tells me, well, Greg, the only reason you won that fight is because they took a point away from Hector. I don't care how I won the fight. I won, Larry. That's all that matters. And in the second fight, I got him to take a point away again in the 11th round, because I was talking to him the whole time, calling him a Puerto Rican I'm just getting under his skin, it's psychological warfare, and I was laughing at him because he couldn't hit me, he was missing a lot of punches, and then I'd get inside with him, and, there's no question in the second fight he was a lot better shape than the first fight. In the first fight, from the 6th round on, he was tired, because I knew how Hector liked to fight. Hector liked to fight a minute and a half each round. The other minute and a half, he'd BS, the ref would break you up, he'd walk behind the referee. He was a master at stalling, he could hold, and he was just he's a brilliant fighter as far as survival goes. Mm-hmm. So, I had studied Hector, and I knew that he'd only like to fight, half the round, so my game plan was to go out there and fight him, make him fight 3 minutes of every round for the first 6 rounds, and he's going to be dead tired because by then that's going to be a normal 12-round fight for him because, he's already fought as much in that 6 rounds as he normally fights in 12. And so by the 6th, 7th round, I was hitting him in the belly, and I could hear him just winching, and I knew, and he'd been in there long enough to know. And in the second fight, there's no question I won the fight. And guys, when you guys been fighting as long as me and Hector, you don't leave the ring if you think you won the fight.
Right.
And Hector left the ring because he was frustrated, kind of pissed off that he wasn't able to, win that fight. So he ended up, if you watch the fight, he left the ring. The promoter had to talk him into coming back into the ring. And, hey, man, come back. I got the judges. Don't worry about it. So, yeah, that's another fight that, there's no question. Just like the first Vinnie fight, I know I won that, but, what can you do? Cry about it, and people just think you're going to be a crybaby. So,
of all your fights, you fought everybody pretty much of your generation. You had a spectacular knockout against Boom Boom Mancini. Obviously, the Pazienza and Camacho wins. What was your most satisfying win, you think?
Well,
of your career, like
probably either the Jimmy Paul fight or the first Hector fight, because basically I was a stepping stone. I was an opponent. That's how he was looking at me, and that kind of peed me off.
It kind of woke everybody up as who you were.
I wasn't an opponent for anybody,
right?
And it was going to be a battle of the undefeated. It was going to be Hector fighting Julio. Puerto Rico against Mexico. Blah blah blah. Well, I knew that. That kind of made me mad, so it motivated me to get in better shape. Just train, and. And come fight time, I was in a lot better shape than him. He had trouble making weight. I'd heard that, this little guy come up to me at the weigh-in and says, Greg, Hector's been in the steam room for the last few hours, and I'm just, yeah, okay, whatever. And I could have been, something they're trying to get me, it could have been a piece of psychological warfare, I didn't take it into consideration too much, but when Hector got on the scale, he was like 140 and a half, and I remember he had these leopard skin G-string underwear on. He had to take them off because he was like 140 and a half. So when he took his underwear off, and he was like, they were soft and wet, and I was thinking, okay, this old man was telling me the truth. Well, when he got off the scale, he had these, like an ice bucket or a hotel ice bucket that they give you in your room. He had somebody that had all these oranges quartered up in, and he got off the scale, and he started eating these oranges like a madman, sucking all the juice out of them and eating them, and then he had a 2-liter bottle of pop, and he'd start sucking that down. So that right there told me he was dehydrated, and I mean, I'm dehydrated just as much as he is, but there's no way I'm going to let my guy that I'm fighting ever going to see me sucking down something in front of him, because there's just no way you're going to be able to rehydrate yourself in 12 hours, or 24 hours, let alone 12 hours. So, I knew that, that was just going to add to my advantages by him being dehydrated. So, it worked to my advantage.
Greg, who was the toughest fighter you ever fought?
Well, I'd probably say Vinny's one of the toughest. I mean, he's the kind of guy that you just beat up and you keep coming. I was never a real big one-punch knockout guy, but,
right.
I could knock guys out. I mean, I had decent power. I had heavy hands. That's what they used to say about me. And, I could knock guys out if I had them 2-3 shots in a row, but, Vinny's the kind of guy that just kept coming. There's a lot of guys that tend to get frustrated with that when they're just thumping the guy with everything they got, and he keeps coming. You're in the, man, what's keeping this guy up, man? I mean, hitting him with everything but the kitchen sink, So, I think
I actually, can I say this? I actually heard that, Roger Mayweather, who has something bad to say about almost everybody, says that you were the toughest white guy he ever saw in his life. I remember hearing a quote that said that you were like one of the toughest guys he'd ever seen.
Yeah, well, me and Roger used to have major go-arounds in the ring. We sparred thousands of rounds together, and we'd have, it would be, it was one of those sparring sessions where the whole gym would just stop and watch us. Like when I sparred Jeff Fennick a couple times. He's one of those things where we'd go at it. I'm trying to knock him out. He's trying to take me out. So I used to get on him all the time. In the gym and stuff, and thumping him. And Roger was a great fighter. He's one of those guys. He didn't have much of a chin, but he could take you out with that right hand. He had a good left hook on him. He had a good jab on him. So, his downfall was his chin. So, me and Roger had many, many battles in the gym as far as sparring goes.
We have a couple minutes left here with Greg Haugen. I have a question as far as the boxing game goes right now. Who are you a fan of? Who do you like that's boxing these days?
I'm a fan of Floyd's when he fights, but I'm not a fan of all the BS that goes along with him. But he's definitely the most skilled guy out there. Does everything good, tough to hit. Andre Ward's another good fighter that's coming up that does a lot of things good. That's about it. I don't watch a lot of fights anymore because it ain't the same.
Right.
Back in the day when I was fighting, you had 5, 6, 7 good fighters in every weight division. Like when I was fighting, you had Mancini, Bramble, Rosario, Paul. In the welterweights, you had, Hearns, Leonard, Cuevas. You had at least 4 or 5 good world-class figers in every weight. And now you're lucky to get 1 or 2 throughout the whole, game.
And you guys are all willing to fight each other, where it seems like for money everybody avoids each other these days, and that's probably one of the downfalls of boxing, wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah, there's no question. Well, it's as much as the promoters. Them promoters are just scumbags, man. They're flesh peddlers, and a lot of them, they're like Bob Arum. He doesn't want to see his cash cow Pacquiao get beat up by Floyd. Yeah. He's not going to put Pacquiao in there with Floyd.
Right.
Not till he knows, not till probably maybe after this fight, because he knows his cash cow's coming at the end. And Pacquiao's lost his last 2 fights. He got beat up by Marquez in the last fight, I thought. And, I didn't think he lost the Bradley fight, but the 3 blind mice that were judging it obviously did. And, gave it to Bradley. But, back in the day, I was fighting. Pacquiao would have been lucky to be top 10 fighter. So, I mean, I don't watch a lot of fighting anymore. I mean,
what do you think of the big MMA UFC surge that's going on right now these days?
I'm not a big fan of the MMA. I mean, the guys aren't that skilled in the striking department. They're good in the submission holds and. I'm a firm believer in fight to fight. You're standing up and you're throwing down. You're giving me one and I'm going to give you one. And, not get on the ground and try to choke you out. And back in the day, you had a problem at school. You go out and settle stuff at the corner.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't work that way anymore. So I'm not. I don't really watch that MMA. Every now and then, one of my buddies will invite me over to. One of the big fights that they got on pay-per-view, and I'll go over there and watch it. But, it's not something that I go out of my way to watch.
Well, you're certainly the greatest fighter to ever come on our station, and certainly the best fighter in the area of all time. And we really appreciate you coming on. One last thing we wanted to ask you about is the Greg Haugen Foundation, something you're very passionate about.
Well, I had a foundation going to work with the benefits autism because I got an autistic grandson. But one of the guys I was in business with was a shyster, and he thought he was going to get rich off of my grandson's illness or something. So, instead of kicking the crap out of him, I just split ways with him. So that's kind of in limbo right now. But I still do a lot of stuff for I still go on the walks and try to do fundraisers and stuff for autism. Because my little 9-year-old,
that
affected him, and so. But I'm going to be, going to work for the city of Seattle here. I think in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be starting a gym, working with troubled kids out of the South Shore School for the first, I think for the next 8 or 9 months, and then they're building us a gym across the street that we're going to be able to go to. So. I'm just working with troubled kids right now, amateurs, and teaching these kids how to fight. And I like working with the young kids better than the pros because it's just too much of a pain in the ass with the pros because they know everything and it becomes an argument. And I'm not into arguing. You're going to do it or you're not. And, if you're going to do it, then you're going to do it right. So
well, they don't make them like they used to.
Amateurs.
That makes me.
You'll be hearing from me.
That makes me feel really old when Greg Haugen is a grandfather. For God's sakes, I feel horrible.
2 times, man.
That's
2 times.
Well. Congratulations, and Greg, I tell you, it's like he said, the favorite guest we've ever had on our show. We really appreciate you coming on. Stay healthy, and we hope to talk to you again soon. All right, that's it for us. We want to thank all our guests: Greg Haugen, Travis Huntington, Ben and Brad, Andy Greenberg, Gio Newland, our producer and engineer Nick Cruikshank, Dimitri, Sandeman, and Jordan Eskenazi. Next week is Army-Navy, so we're back on the 15th. Don't forget to listen to Health Matters Monday nights at 6 and December 10th, our special DUI show. I'm Maury Eskenazi. Thanks a lot for listening. We'll see you next time in the locker room.